Welcome to Gold Coast Insider, where we bring you business insights, stories, opportunities, and forecasts from movers and shakers across the Gold Coast. I'm your host, Estella Rodiguero. I'm CEO of Regional Development Australia Gold Coast. Good morning. My guest today is Todd Babiak. He is CEO of Brand Gold Coast and in his spare time an author and investor. He co-founded the strategy consultancy firm Strong Story Engine, which ultimately brought him to Australia and, lucky Todd, to the life-changing Gold Coast. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you.
Todd, you've lived and worked across Canada and Tasmania, and now you're on the Gold Coast. How has experiencing such different places shaped your perspective on culture, identity, and community?
I suppose you can imagine that people are people, and every city wants to be the best place to live, work, and play. They all want to market themselves. It's very competitive. But what surprised me since doing this work was Story Engine. We started with startups and banks and universities and found our way to cities because they were so undifferentiated. But if you actually listen to people, local people, wherever you're working, you hear something really powerful. And it turns out that people choose the Gold Coast, people choose Tasmania, people choose Edmonton, people choose the Yukon, people choose London for reasons, and they're bound together by those reasons. And you could turn that into something if you listen carefully and you're honest about what makes these places unique. It's a powerful, truly a story engine. And so I suppose if you think about a place having a brand, a company like Apple, 1/3 of its value is goodwill, is brand value, its reputation. We choose it for emotional reasons. And the same goes for cities, yet we don't often use it. The Gold Coast brand, we've had it valued at $21.3 billion. Well, let's use this asset. Let's build it and grow it in time.
And so every place has a uniqueness to it. Every city in the world has a uniqueness to it, and every region, hasn't it?
Cities are just people, and it turns out that people have something in common who choose a place like the Gold Coast, where it's really come into its own in the last 20 years. Most people here have come here from somewhere else, and that decision is really meaningful. And it turns out if you listen to Gold Coasters, it's really similar, the reason that people are here. So there's an anthropological and cultural value to that, to understanding it. And then in this competitive landscape, understanding how to tell that story, and then how do we extract the most value we can out of it. Because most people are really just confused by this stuff. The word brand is a confusing word. It'd be better if we never used the word, but it turns out, a story is really powerful. It draws people in, and it's a big decision to live where we live.
I guess from my perspective, having lived on the Gold Coast for quite some time, I've never really thought about what our culture is and what our unique culture. I know that we always talk about, look, we've got the best beaches in the world. We've truly got a gorgeous place we live in. But I've never really thought past that. You sort of live and work in a place, but you never stand outside and look at it and see what is it about us that makes us special or builds our culture.
Well, I can tell you my experience,
Yeah.
having just become a new Gold Coaster myself. When a place, for example, is largely built through newcomers, everyone remembers what it's like to be new. And so you're immediately welcomed. And what people told us in our interviews with them is they felt like overnight they were Gold Coasters. There wasn't a purity test. They didn't have a long process to feel like they belonged. Right away, they were productive, active members of this community. And because the Gold Coast doesn't have 1,000 ASX listed companies, they were also quite entrepreneurial. The risk to come to a place like this means we also have something in common. Usually people have come here to positively change their lives in some way. And maybe that's driven by business. Maybe it's as a student. Maybe it's as an investor, or maybe it's to just have a new look at life. But everyone understands we have beaches. The cultural part is the real value. What is it that's driving the momentum in this place, the most entrepreneurial city in Australia, and really the center in many ways of creative enterprise in Australia? It's because we are the way we are. Gold Coasters are a certain way. And so why not light a fire under it?
So you're now CEO of Brand Gold Coast, but what attracted you to this opportunity and what excites you most about the potential of the city? So if I take a step back to when you first started, yeah.
I've never been interested in, for example, working for New York or London or Paris, even Melbourne. These
Oh,
are these are sort of fixed places, and it feels like they can't be malleable in a sense.
mm,
What I love is a misunderstood place, a place that's still trying to figure itself out, a, a challenger and a battler city with a lot of ambition. And that's what the Gold Coast is. We know from our research that there is a view of the Gold Coast in Australia and around the world that's not entirely correct. And I think there's a way for us, if we listen carefully to Gold Coasters, put it together, look at the competitive landscape, tell that powerful story, and in time bridge that gap, we can actually have a really powerful economic development strategy that unifies all this effort, whether you're a business, whether you're a local government spending money, whether you're an organization like yours. What's the language we use? Who are our audiences? How do we build that so that we're selling to them in the same way every single time in our own words, and we become genuine partners and ambassadors into something really special. And I think a city like that, where you can't be passive, you're in this process of positive transformation. It's really attractive.
mm. I'm going to take a step back. You've worked in many cities and regions around the world, as we mentioned. So where else have you worked, and how, and can you share some examples of the places that have used their brand effectively to solve their problems and to seize their opportunities? That's a big question, isn't it? I'm sure you're up for it.
Sure. I didn't do this to Austin, Texas, but I think of Austin in many ways as 20 years ago what the Gold Coast is now. There was a lot happening in Austin, but it didn't really have a way to talk about itself. It was overshadowed by the bigger cities in Texas like Dallas and Houston. Even San Antonio was a bit cooler at the time. And then all the talent and all the ambition and all the investment was going to the West Coast or the East Coast in the United States. But a librarian calling in to a radio show when the city was talking about doing yet another rebrand said, Actually, I don't think we need to worry about trying to be like other cities. The big threat to Austin to me is all the development in the ring around the city. We're just becoming Walmart and Target and just another big city. I think what we have to do instead is stop being ashamed of the hubcap Jesus guy and actually protect that. We have to protect what makes us different. We have to keep Austin weird. And when he said, keep Austin weird, this librarian, everyone sort of smiled. And if you've been to Austin, you know what some people might see as ugly and messy and chaotic in its core, others find absolutely attractive. It is weird. It is weird at that time that the number one tourist opportunity was to go see bats under the bridge, that there was a cathedral of garbage, and they had a music festival. A lot of music was happening in and around Austin. They call it was South by Southwest. And when he said keep Austin weird and started printing t-shirts up, the Independent Business Association took it. They put it up in their windows. This really started to spread. It got outside of his control entirely, but it tells a lovely story. We're weird, and that weirdness is under threat in a globalized world. Let's make the decision today to keep this place weird, to protect it. And South by Southwest turned into not only a music festival, but if you want to launch anything weird into the world, you come to Austin. And in time, the young people, the entrepreneurs who are attracted to weirdness, they just saw this as a magnet. So whether it was the festival as a Trojan horse or just the culture of the community itself, it just became more weird and it attracted weird people. And it turns out weird people, there are enough of them to build an amazing economic development strategy to tell a beautiful story. And now even places like Sydney, they actually imported South by Southwest Sydney, paid a lot of money to do it, to try to take some of that energy that was built by a small battler city in Texas. So that's a beautiful example of what we mean by place branding, where in your own words, in your own way, you can rally behind a central story and a pitch to bring investment, to bring students, to bring young people, to bring entrepreneurs and activity and talent to a city. And I think that's what we want to do on the Gold Coast. And when I've worked in other places, we don't have that librarian everywhere.
Yeah.
So the process I figured out was you have to sit down with a couple of hundred local people, a pure sample of that community, across income lines and geography and age and ethnicity and everything else you can track. Sit down with them, listen carefully, listen to their stories, and inevitably, there's going to be something they have in common. So by about interview 30 or 40, you realize you're hearing the same story. There's a Gold Coast story, and if we use it powerfully, we can do what Austin has done, and then every other place I've worked has done, where we can, as you're saying, unify our culture and try to strategically bring it together so that all that complexity that we inevitably create feels simple and compelling. And then we can go out there and sell it.
It's about authenticity too, isn't it? From that story, it sounded to me like they were staying very authentic to who they were and what they are and what they represent. And I guess it's about coming back to that core of where you are and finding out what is your authentic story and what makes you that standalone place in that authenticity.
As a business, you would never sell something that you don't want to make.
Yeah.
You wouldn't borrow someone else's language.
Well,
What you want to do is figure out, who are we?
yeah.
What are we selling to the world? What's our gift to the world? What can only happen here? What would break our hearts if we had to leave this place? That's the core, and it's very powerful. We're bringing up our children here. We want to be proud of this place. We want this place to grow and thrive. And that's really powerful, the decision to live where we live. And so when people say, oh, why do we need to think about our reputation or our brand? It's because it's worth billions of dollars. And if we muddy it up, or we use cliches, or we borrow what other cities do instead of being true to ourselves, we're actually making poor business decisions.
Yeah, yeah. So Brand Gold Coast. Brand Gold Coast is fairly newly established. And when you stepped into the role, what was your original vision, and how has that vision evolved, or has it evolved? I guess.
Well, I tried to come in absolutely curious without any preconceptions. I moved from Canada to Tasmania after doing this work in Tasmania. And when I told Tasmanians that I was moving to the Gold Coast, I had a lot of eye rolling and a lot of people talking about some really outdated cliches and superficial ideas of the Gold Coast. So I knew that people were still seeing the Gold Coast in the way it once was.
Yeah.
And and they were curious about why I was doing this. What I was most excited about, and before having a vision to do anything, is I just needed to figure this place out. And the Gold Coast is only what Gold Coasters think it is. And so we put together those 200 interviews. I started doing them, and right away I saw and heard something quite powerful from people, and then realized I think we're hearing a very consistent and powerful story. And so by the time I had 100, 120, 130, and then started doing further stakeholder interviews, it started to form into something that I think is a powerful story, and one that answers a great question in Australia. And we can offer something to this country and to the world by being true to what Gold Coasters feel. So before having any vision, the idea was, well, let's just make sure we understand this place first. And our organizational mission really is to help everyone use the Gold Coast story to build everything. And because our brand is strong, our brand story is wonderful. We haven't executed it perfectly. No one ever executes their brand perfectly, but our job now is to, through as a client service organization, almost like a lab, to help everyone, whether you're a business or you're the local government or you're another entity. Let's unify our efforts. Let's tell that story. Let's find those customers, and let's start to transform even further.
And I think you're touching on that. So brand Gold Coast, we traditionally thought of as, how do you brand it for tourism, predominantly for tourism. But I'm hearing now it's a lot more than tourism, isn't it? Like it is talking about, it is an economic driver in a lot of senses, not just in tourism sense.
No, I think, again, you build everything with this. And of course, you communicate with it as well. But it's almost as though you do tourism last. What you want is a pure, and use the word authentic, expression of what it means to be a Gold Coaster. And as you start to play with that, and as you and I, we've probably both been to Paris. We spent all the money. We went to Paris and spent time there. And what did we want to do when we were in Paris? We wanted to live like Parisians for a few days or a week. It's the same thing with the Gold Coast. And so as we're building out this strategy for investment, this strategy for business growth, this strategy for the way that the city government engages with its citizens, with Gold Coasters. As we start to look at, of course, the study strategy, the universities we have, as we start to play with businesses and help them tell their own stories and the Gold Coast story, we really start to bring something in that can work well with the millions of dollars we inevitably will spend on destination marketing. Destination marketing at its best tells the city story. And so first you want to get the city story, you want to play with it, you want to test it, you want to find your audiences. And then ideally when it comes down to, okay, let's now do the destination marketing, it all unifies and creates an exponential value. So all the other work we have to do lives inside that destination story. You don't do that work first, inevitably, and I'm not saying the Gold Coast does this or has done it. Most places, almost every other place does it. There's no research budget. So you end up doing something quite superficial. And sometimes you just reinforce who you already are, what's already baked in. So if 99.9% of your audience already thinks something, reminding them through videos, tourism ads, there's some value in that. But how about instead we take it a depth lower? We use that as a door to accomplish so much more about what it means to be a Gold Coaster. And if you come to this place, you can be one of us for a few days, you and your family. You'll feel something you can't feel anywhere else, and you will leave feeling better.
So, at its core, the brand Gold Coast exists to take the city into the future, right? And position it strongly within both the Australian and global marketplaces. But what does that actually mean in practice? Todd?
Yeah, I think you build your brand far more through what you do
Yeah.
than what you say. And so in practice, that's why we're a small team operating as almost a laboratory or a client service organization. So when our partners at Invest Gold Coast, for example, are looking at major projects and they want to reach out to the right people, we want to help them so that every one of those projects tells the Gold Coast story and we find the right partners for those projects. As we're building something really special here on the Gold Coast around the circular economy, how can we involve all Gold Coasters in it so that they feel a sense of ownership of it? So it's not just a big building. It is something that's happening in every household in this city. When there's an opportunity for us to work with our universities, can we subtly and not so subtly all tell the same story in our own ways, but even more powerfully, create projects and ways to make decisions that reinforce the Gold Coast story? How can our counselors, who are making big decisions every day, and a lot of senior people in the city government, understand the Gold Coast story as they're making decisions? In Austin, Texas, for example, once that Keep Austin Weird story was mature, the city manager, like the CEO of Austin, he just said, whenever I have to make a tough decision, I just ask myself, will this keep us weird or not? And I think that is what we want to do. Ideally, can we ask ourselves before we make every decision, is this Gold Coast or not? And everyone understands what that means. They understand the story behind it, how we fit competitively, what Gold Coasters are asking of us. Can we do it in a Gold Coast way? Actually, even with Gold Coast values. And what Gold Coasters told us their values are: this place is open, this place is all about positive transformation, and this place is unpretentiously ambitious. Can we fold that into not only the way that we communicate, but even the way we make decisions? This is a lot of people told us, I'm on the Gold Coast because I had some ideas, big ideas, and everyone was saying no to me in Melbourne, or I wasn't part of the network in Sydney, or in London, no one would even look at me. I was totally anonymous.
Mm,
Same in Delhi. I knew my family didn't have the connections I needed. I didn't go to the right school. On the Gold Coast, no one really cares where I went to school. They care about who I'm becoming and what I'm going to do here. So it's not an elite city. It's not a tall poppy, cut you down city. It's, who are you? What can we create together? You're a Gold Coaster overnight. Let's go. And I think understanding that and using it as, I think, a model for growth is really useful. There's an energy and a spirit we can tap into here. We're the Australian risk takers. And while we don't want to say yes to everything, this is the city where the default answer is yes. Let's get you there. If you have an idea, maybe you don't have the right networks. That's okay. You come to the Gold Coast, we'll hear you out. We'll have that coffee with you. And if you have a good idea and it's right for us, we'll get you there. And I think that spirit in this city is what has been behind its growth. It's our job to uncover it, tell that story back to people, and help us exponentially grow with it.
And I think you're right. I think the we've got to the stage now where 3M Gold Coast has, in its truest form, has a dollar value, and to us as Gold Coasters. And so when you're putting in projects and applications, that should be part of that story of that application or of that funding or of that project or that submission. It actually has got to the stage where it has that value and it should be incorporated, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And I think what Gold Coasters are saying and what the recent history of this city, the history of this city shows is there are national problems. And there are Gold Coast way to solve those as our gift to Australia and to the world. A recent story that we heard, and we've been profiling the company Modern Pods, for example. It's very Gold Coast, where you have an entrepreneur from another country who couldn't get it going in that country, couldn't get it going in other cities in Australia. We'll be that city that says yes to you. And modular housing in a country with a housing crisis is really attractive. We can do it here. You can do it with velocity here, and we're going to help you build what you're building. And immediately you're going to feel like one of us. You're on our team. We're moving together. And I think that spirit for people with ideas, for business people, for young people looking to study in a culture that's going to give them a really fantastic career. You're going to learn something and experience something here as a young Gold Coaster that you maybe will not get in those cities where you might feel in a Sandstone University, you might feel pretty anonymous.
Mm.
So I think that culture drives so much.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the Gold Coast is still a big country town in a lot of ways as far as its community is built. And what I do notice is that the Gold Coast is made up of a lot of communities. You know, you've got the southern end, which has got gorgeous little communities and cafes and events happening down there. And, you know, all along the coast, you have these incredible communities where people feel part of the community. So they're not getting lost in a city mentality, I think. We still have that.
And interestingly, people warned me when I was starting the interviews, oh, you're going to hear something different in Tugun than you will hear in Majuraba, than you'll hear in Labrador. And when I started doing the interviews, their examples were different. Sure, the way they get up in the morning and do what they do. But when they talked about why they're here, why they chose the Gold Coast,
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
same story. Everyone, like, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to own the morning. Gold Coasters get up early, they get out and they have that walk, they meet the sun, and then they work really hard to earn what it feels like to be a Gold Coaster, and then they have a nice evening. So there is something, even the way you live your life, that is distinct, in this place. And that's something that happens in the South and in the North and in the hinterland and in the towers. That's what I found lovely is there are different ways to talk about it, but there's one story. And the big city mentality versus a small country mentality, it doesn't fit either of those. It's distinct. There's something on the Gold Coast that I've not heard anywhere else. And there is an energy here that kind of supersedes all of those categories.
So looking ahead, what are your key priorities for Brand Gold Coast over the next few years? So you've done the surveying to get a really good understanding of what is Gold Coast. What are your key priorities moving forward over the next few years, Todd? Where do you take it from here?
I guess if you take that phrase apart, unifying cultural expression and strategy,
Oh,
the
oh,
unifying is the hardest part in city government. I'm still fairly new to any government role. We're a corporation wholly owned by the city of Gold Coast. And what we have to do is find ways, kind of hat in hand, to help everyone build using what we have. And we can't do that by being the hammer and forcing anything on anyone.
okay.
So we have to go out there and say, we have amazing data from Gold Coasters.
Mm,
We know what the country thinks about us. We know what the world thinks about us. We understand those gaps. But we know the story. We're going to help you build in a Gold Coast way. So let us help you do that.
mm,
So I suppose getting out there and unifying strategies across this city, whether it's in the business community or in government entities, not for profits, sport, the arts, that's hard. And in a sense, it is also impossible. So really our strategy is to try to do the impossible, to take this really complex beast of a city and to make it feel simple, to make it feel good, different, and then to use that feeling to create. And a lot of that is just a lot of speaking, a lot of helping, a lot of workshops, a lot of events. There will be a look and feel of what it feels like to be a Gold Coaster. We're going to work on that as well. There will, of course, be a website. There will be social media. So we'll do all of that. But being the glue that knits all of this together is hard work, and it is the job. We've split our work into story, service, and scale. We have the story, and we'll always be listening. We'll always be telling it. Through service, we're going to help people use it and to make decisions based on it. And then through scale, we're going to have those national, international opportunities, whether it's ourselves or our partners, to get out there and start getting the world between now and 2032 thinking and feeling about the Gold Coast in a way that they're going to make those decisions for us.
And what a fantastic opportunity we have in the Olympics 2032 as well. So, you've got this great opportunity that's ahead of us as well. And if we position really well, and if we know who we are and what we are, then that sits us really well for taking advantage of these opportunities. And 2032 Olympics is not just about Olympics, is it? It's also about, it's trade, it's investment, it's export, it's a lot of things.
Yeah, it's everything. We're going to have an opportunity for the world to see us and experience us
Mm,
in a different way.
mm,
And the lovely opportunity as well is when we look at whether it's housing or transportation, maybe number one and number two anxieties
mm.
that Gold Coasters have, how can we use the next 5 or 6 years as a way to build cleverly in a Gold Coast way to get us closer to something we can all feel really good about in 2032? And I think the distinctness and the Gold Coast story, we can use it to build. And I think that is something that's far deeper than what the billboards will say.
Mm. Yeah. We were talking, you mentioned place branding, right? And as a terminology, do you want to just quickly explain what is place branding and why is it such a powerful force to shape the economy? But also it keeps in mind that culture, doesn't it, and the identity. Can you give us an outline on place branding?
Yeah, a little bit earlier, I was talking about how historically cities have just not done well in thinking of themselves as branded entities, as having even a reputation. And so they would say their tourism campaign is their brand.
Yeah.
So what you try to do with place branding and the Nordic countries, New Zealand, the approach we took in Tasmania, cities in North America where I've worked, what you try to do there is to understand culturally, what is it about this place that is absolutely distinct? From the point of view of the citizens, what is the story the citizens are telling? You do some competitive analysis, you understand what can only happen here. What would break our hearts if we had to leave? Who are our people in audience segments, whether it's investment for students, for talent, for those businesses that ought to be setting up, and of course, yes, tourism, events, etc.
Mm.
Inevitably,
Bigger picture.
if you think of a city as a business, you would do all of that.
Yeah.
Yet cities historically have not done that. They're all the best place to live, work, and play. And so if you fall into cliches, you don't do any research,
Mm.
you give millions of dollars to advertising agencies to just do that work for you, you miss out on what is really happening in the place and the place's great opportunity. And so place branding is really trying to understand culturally and then socially and then of course economically because culture drives the economy. What is it that can only happen here? What's our product in a sense? And then how can we go out there, not only sell it, but build it in time in a way that gets us closer to success?
So, what are the biggest challenges, though, in creating a globally recognized city brand while staying still true to our culture and our values?
Well, we can't advertise our way to do this. So we will not have an advertising budget to do it. So that's number one. I think a lot of people think, oh, what Brand Gold Coast does is it just advertises all over the place.
Mm.
It's actually not how it works. What we do, if we can arm every Gold Coaster with their own version of the Gold Coast story, so they're making Gold Coast decisions in their lives every day, whether it's in their business, in their family, with their children, when they're inviting people to the Gold Coast through word of mouth when they're traveling, that's the real opportunity for us. So, and that's and that's a free way for us to do our work. Like I said, we will have a website. A we will have social media. We'll have a partnership program with businesses and all Gold Coasters. We'll have a toolkit with photos that tell this story and videos and language that we can all use in the work that we're doing. We'll take advantage of not search engine optimization anymore, but agentic optimization, so that when people are playing around with AI, the right people find what we're creating here on the Gold Coast. So I think in time, what we have to do is make sure that we understand we're a small organization with a small budget, trying to create a unifying force. And we have to do that patiently and, as you said, authentically, without seeming like we're the bullies or we're the police. And that it's not about a logo. It is about a feeling, an understanding, a story, and then a really powerful way to make decisions that reinforce who we are at our best. And I think that's what makes this work for me so compelling,
Yeah.
because you never get it perfect. It's like playing golf. You never get a perfect game. But what you can try to do, especially in a place like the Gold Coast, is use a bit of a network effect, because Gold Coasters love being here. They love talking about the Gold Coast. Can we give them the language and then a decision-making framework to make this place even more special than what it is, using the Gold Coast story, identity, and culture that we've identified?
So it's making every one of the Gold Coast as part of the story and part of being active in supporting and growing our Gold Coast. We all have a role to play, and we're all being inclusive. You're being inclusive in that. I like that. I think historically we've sat back in our chairs and thought, well, you guys will look after the advertising. We see these big glossy things come up, and it goes overseas and everything else, but we've never been actually part of the story or been included to that degree. I actually really, really like that as part of that story. And you're right. Just by being in business, we are part of that story, and we need to be part of that story. We need to be active in that story, don't we?
That's it. Whether you're
Mm.
Baz Luhrmann or you're a young woman who's just graduated from high school,
Yep.
you're proud of the Gold Coast, you're going to meet a lot of people in your life. You're going to meet a lot of people in the next year.
Mm.
And if you can talk about this really special place in a way that is compelling, that is true and authentic, as you said earlier, and attracts the right kind of energy back, whether that's investment, whether that's someone coming for a visit, whether that's someone coming to study at Bond or Griffith or Southern Cross,
Mm.
we're all doing this work. And so our sneaky job is to influence and infiltrate all of those organizations and families and neighborhoods, so that people can actually express that and do our work for us.
So, Todd, historically also we've had countries that we actually marketed to. Is that still part of your strategy? It is. And what would those key countries be now? Have they changed or do they morph?
I suppose they morph a little bit, whether you're looking at investment or
Mm,
study,
good point.
or or whether you're looking at our tourism markets. But essentially, New Zealand, they know the most about us. There are lots of New Zealanders who've moved here to change their lives in a positive way. Of course, Australia, but then you have the US and you have China, you have Japan, you have Vietnam. Increasingly, you have Europe. And so we want to make sure that there's an understanding. For example, we know from our research, we'd love it if they did, but Americans don't know much about us.
Mm,
Chinese people don't know much about us. Vietnamese people don't know much about us. New Zealanders know a lot.
mm.
Japanese people know a bit. So we have a lot of work to do, and we have to be clever about it, because, like I said, we don't have a lot of advertising money. But we do know from our research that there are clever ways to do this. And we've listened to Gold Coasters. We can arm them with that, but we can also take advantage of priority sectors we have. For example, film and television, the screen industries, they carry a lot of cultural capital. So those markets like the US, China, Vietnam, who don't know much about us, when they find out that we have this massive film industry here and we've shot all these amazing films here and people are coming, that carries sophistication and energy and creativity. And I think in a city that is really all about creative enterprise, we can use that. And actually, there's an economic value in that industry, but there's also massive brand and reputation value, because there's something glamorous and cool about it. And so people want to be close to it. It's a little like when you hear the word Hollywood, something happens to you. And by 2028, it'd be great if you hear the phrase Gold Coast, something similar is happening. In fact, there might be more happening here than anywhere else, definitely in Australia and even Australasia.
Mm. Okay, so what to you is the Gold Coast story? This is a big question.
Well, it doesn't really matter what it is to me, but what we heard from Gold Coasters is the decision to be here, to be a Gold Coaster, means a lot to them. where they were previously often, because they've been here, they were in places that said no to them. And this was the city that said yes,
Yeah.
where they were able to really quickly transform their lives. And whether it's their business, their family, the art they do, the investments they wanted to make, this was the city where they felt like they could change anything here. And there's that sense of positive transformation in the air. And that's what people talked about. They were in a position with their family that they never could have imagined if they'd stayed in Melbourne. They were in a position in their business and they never could have imagined if they stayed in New York City. The kind of work they're doing here could not have been possible in Sydney, where they were locked out because they weren't part of that network. They weren't with the right schools. And of course, people do talk about the feeling this city has, that sunshine in the morning. They actually came here after always sleeping until 10 a.m. on the weekends. Now they're getting up at 5. They used to be out of breath in Sydney after walking 100 meters. Now they're a Gold Coaster, they're running marathons. So that positive personal transformation at an individual level is what you hear, but you see it across almost every element of the Gold Coast, this sense of positive transformation. And the kinds of people who are looking for that have chosen to come here for that big positive change in their lives. And you can see it all around. And it's a big part of our business community, but it's also just a part of family after family who've been here. We're the city where the default answer is yes. And for a lot of people, that's really powerful. It's finally happened. Like they got here and the feeling was immediately transformed, and their lives have been too. So that's something that I think is core to the Gold Coast story.
So finally, how can Gold Coasters, be them businesses, entrepreneurs, creatives, students, residents, how can they get on board and actively contribute to building the next chapter of our city's story?
We're going to have, as I said, we're going to have a partnership programs, and it will be free, of course. You just tell us your email and you can get into the toolkit and play with it. You can come to the workshops. We're going to be running a pipeline of workshops to help businesses build and tell their own brand stories and make decisions based on them, and then to wrap their stories and their business brand in the Gold Coast brand and story. And we're going to help them do that. And then we're going to have a pipeline of them. Maybe you can use that for HR. Maybe you can use it for your social media campaign, maybe for your packaging, for your design. We know things now that businesses can use here, and we're going to give them back to those businesses. We're going to have, of course, events. We want people to come and hear and play with this story to make it their own so they can tell it and use it to make decisions. So that's one way for sure. We're going to try to reach everyone over the next 5 years. It's in our plan in some way. And so that's a big part of it. Just through curiosity, this is your story. This is your city. And we want you to be able to express that pride you have in the Gold Coast as Gold Coasters in a way that actually aligns with what we all feel and then what the world wants from us. So we have a lot of really, really cool data. So that's just a fun way we can do it. You will feel better. When you come to our workshops, when you come to our events, you'll feel better about being a Gold Coaster. When you hear what other Gold Coasters say, the sense of possibility and reinvention in this city is so fascinating, so compelling, and to me as a newcomer, so welcoming. The sense of belonging in this city and the energy behind it, I think a new way for us to talk about it and to use it to make decisions. We want to give that to you, want to make it fun. And I think business after business, family after family, organization after organization, artist after artist, we just want to grow. We want people to spread this story by word of mouth and digitally, of course.
Thank you so much. It's been really exciting listening to your vision and what you have learned about the Gold Coast. I find it really interesting because from originally an outsider coming to the city, it's the best way to see what a city is, isn't it? It's because you're starting from ground zero. You don't have any preconceived ideas about it. But I love that it incorporates that real economic driver for our city as well. And that becomes part of the story, and we all become part of the story. So thank you so much for your time today, Todd. And I'll make sure that we put up any of the workshops you've got coming. So happy to display them. We'll put the webpage underneath this podcast so that everyone can link in and have a look. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Estelle. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks for listening today. For a complete list of podcast episodes and transcripts, go to rdagoldcoast.org.au/podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter.